The story begins with two air crash investigators who are working on a new case. In this case, a plane kept crashing repeatedly. No matter how many times it was repaired, it would crash at a specific location, and so far, no passenger has survived. Because of this, many airlines have also closed down. The strange thing is that after the last crash, that plane was purchased by an airline. Now, we see the owner of that airline, who completely changed that haunted plane. The plane was also ready for its first flight. We now see the pilot of that plane, Criff. We can also see the owners of that plane celebrating. The official name of that plane will now be Flight 47. The name of this movie is also Dark Flight 47. This is the introduction of the movie, after which we see a girl named Kif. Her friend was also with her. Kif was not happy because her mother wanted to send her to England to study, but Kif wants to be a pilot. We also see that Kif's mother, Fawn, did not have any manners. She would often say bad things to her husband, Jamras. Sometimes she would yell at both Kif and Jamras. They were all going on a vacation because it was Kif's birthday tomorrow. They were also going to the airport. Now we see the crew of this same haunted Flight 47. There were two air hostesses in it. The name of their head hostess was New. The name of the third pilot was Prince. At the airport, there was a monk, and nearby, a boy with dreadlocks named Wave was also sitting. Then a Chinese girl named In comes there and starts asking that monk where she needs to go for boarding. But that monk gets up and leaves from there because he believed that he cannot talk to girls because he is a monk. We see that Kif, Fawn, and Jamras have also reached there. Then we see all the crew members going into the airplane. On the way, New stops and looks at the plane from outside. Then we see a flashback in which a therapist was telling her that everything she had seen was part of a hallucination and now she can sit on the plane again. Then we come back to the present time. We see the maintenance officer Bank and pilot Criff and co-pilot T outside the plane. Here, maintenance officer Bank and New, the head hostess, like each other, but they never got a chance to confess their love to each other. Now, all the crew members get on the plane. Bank also checks everything and gives them permission to take off. Meanwhile, Anne asks for help from a foreigner, but he starts misbehaving with her. So, Wave comes in between and makes that foreigner leave from there. That is, the boy with the dreadlocks. Now, one by one, all the passengers board the plane. We can see that Kif, Fawn, Jamras, the monk, Wave, and the foreigner who misbehaved were all in the same cabin. There were also some other people in that cabin, including an old lady and an English couple, John and Michelle. Here also, Fawn was just yelling at Jamras. Kif did not like this at all, so she gets up and goes to another seat. Downstairs, Bank was just about to leave when suddenly he hears some noise from the plane's basement. So he goes inside to check. We see someone passing behind him. Now, there was a problem for Bank because he got locked inside the basement. Meanwhile, Kif was playing a game on her iPad when a ball, which belonged to a child, hits her feet. That child was looking at Kif. Kif throws the ball towards the child, but that child throws the ball back towards Kif. So Kif puts the ball on the seat next to her and does not give the ball to that child. Then New comes there and goes to calm down the old lady because she was scared. The head hostess, New, now gives instructions to all the crew members to give instructions to all the passengers. All the crew members give instructions to the passengers in their own unique way. Then New is asked to tell the captain to take off on the telecom. Downstairs, Bank was badly injured during the takeoff because he could not grab anything in time. Here, the third pilot, Prince, was not able to open the fridge. So New comes and helps him. She taps on the fridge, and it opens. The fridge in the plane she was in before also used to open like this. So, shockingly, New has already been an air hostess on this same haunted plane. But for now, we know that this 47 flight is the same haunted plane that those two investigators were talking about. And New has already worked on this plane before. But how all this happened, we will find out later. Now, New starts seeing some glimpses of the past. She sees someone behind her, and it was the ghost of a girl. New does not pay much attention and goes outside to check on the passengers. Here, the monk and Kif both see someone's footprints behind New, which were following her. But there was no one there. But they both think that maybe it was their imagination. So they try to check again when New goes back into the cabin. But this time, everything was normal, so they think that it was indeed their imagination. Meanwhile, we can see that Wave and have become friends. And they were crying while watching a movie. Downstairs, we see Bank in the basement who has been injured a lot. But first, he gets up and normalizes the pressure of the basement and then starts looking for a way to get out. Then we see Wave, who was in the bathroom washing his face. Then we see someone's hands behind him which scratch Wave's face. Outside, the foreigner was behaving strangely. And suddenly, his eyes turn white, and he starts speaking in someone else's voice. And then his body suddenly starts twisting and turning. Prince and the other air hostesses lift that foreigner and seat him back in his seat. Now, when Wave comes back and asks about the cut on his face, so he asks an air hostess for a bandage. But the air hostess says that there is no scratch on Wave's face. And indeed, there was no scratch on his face. Now, Wave and think that maybe it was a hallucination for both of them. But we saw that his face was indeed scratched. Now, our attention goes to Bank in the basement, who is crawling to get out. He turns back and notices that the inside of the plane was rusting. and then he sees a lot of ghosts here. Up above, T also notices that there is some movement in the basement, so he goes out of the cockpit. Prince tells T everything that happened with that foreigner, so T starts ignoring his words and takes him down to the basement with him, and there, he finds Bank. Both of them now bring Bank up, and Nu gives Bank first aid. Here, Bank tells her that there is something strange in this plane. Downstairs, T is checking what the problem is, and he sees that the plane was slowly rusting. Now, T turns on the lights and sees a lot of ghosts in front of him. Meanwhile, Wave comes into the cabin and says that he is hearing a ringing sound in his ears, so he asks Nu for some candy or chewing gum. And here, he also sees the injured Bank sitting. He goes back and tells him that there is some problem with this flight. Now Nu asks Prince to distract all the passengers, and Prince goes and announces that Nu and Bank are getting married on that plane. Hearing this, Bank faints and falls down, and he also gets hurt. On the other hand, T had also come out of the basement, but he was not in his senses. When Nu asks him, he just says that he has to go and tell the captain everything, and then he goes into the cockpit. We can now see that the outside of this plane also started rusting, even though it was sent here completely new. Then, shockingly, it is shown that an air hostess falls down and dies. And then something starts happening to all the passengers and the crew. Everyone started behaving strangely except for Bank and Nu. Only they were in their senses. And a lady bends her whole body right in front of Bank, and this was a very creepy scene. All this was happening because the plane had reached a very high altitude, and the plane's pressure system had broken down. Because of this, the oxygen was slowly running out. So Nu quickly goes and brings an oxygen cylinder. And here, she also sees the ghost of an air hostess. And this ghost was very clearly visible. All the people in that cabin had died, but Bank was still alive. So Nu quickly goes and puts an oxygen mask on Bank's face. Meanwhile, Kif also sees the ghost of that child, who was playing with his own head. And then he lifts his head and throws it towards Kif, just like he was throwing the ball. Now, the people who were alive had come into one cabin, and only Nu, Prince, and Bank were left from the crew. And among the passengers, only the old lady, the monk, Kif, Fawn, Jamras, Wave, and the foreigner couple were left. Now, Bank tries to go inside the cockpit, but it is of no use because the door was not opening. This is because the captain had died. Now, Fawn starts yelling at Bank and Nu because that was her job. So Bank says that he will go into the basement and turn on the pressure system, and Nu gets ready to go with him. But Fawn was still yelling unnecessarily. So Kif tells her mother to be quiet. And when Fawn does not stop, Kif tells her that if Fawn keeps yelling like this, the oxygen will run out quickly because the backup oxygen only lasts for 15 minutes. And when it runs out, they will all die from lack of oxygen. After this, Nu and Bank both go down. And there were a lot of ghosts downstairs as well. And the inside of the plane was slowly filling up with rust, meaning that this plane will destroy itself. Now, that plane looked as if it was centuries old. The good thing is that both Nu and Bank had oxygen cylinders with them. And Bank also gets busy turning on the pressure system without any delay. Up above, the old lady was breathing heavily, so Fawn starts yelling at her too. So Anne starts yelling at Fawn and says that the old lady is sick and she is the same age as Fawn's mother. So Fawn also starts yelling at Anne. And when her husband, Jamras, tries to quiet her, she starts saying bad things to him too. Now, in anger, Kif brings a bottle of wine and starts drinking, along with Prince. Meanwhile, Nu's oxygen in the basement runs out. So Bank gives her his oxygen mask, and he starts fixing the pressure system again. Up above, Prince goes to the old lady, and Kif goes and sits with Jamras. She tells him everything that is on her mind, that she wants to be a pilot and definitely does not want to go to England. She also tells Jamras that she loves him, but she does not like it when her mother yells at Jamras, and Jamras does not say anything to this. Now, Fawn starts yelling at Kif about why she will not go to England, but this time, Jamras yells back at her and tells Fawn to be quiet. Finally, he said something for the first time. Now, the condition of that old lady was also getting very bad. And downstairs, Bank and Nu were also in trouble because the oxygen from Bank's cylinder had also almost run out. Then we see inside the plane that Jamras starts singing the happy birthday song for Kif. And then a trolley stops at the door of their cabin. And the ghost of an air hostess was also singing the happy birthday song. Everyone was telling each other to remove that trolley. But in the end, Wave goes and touches that trolley lightly. But when he turns back to remove it, the trolley was gone from there. And then a ghost possesses Anne. And that ghost was asking about Nu and saying that Nu left them alone. Then that ghost comes out of Anne's body. This means that the whole matter here was related to Nu. Now, downstairs, Nu faints and falls down. She was still a little bit in her senses, and she could now clearly see all the ghosts present there. This means that one can see ghosts clearly only when one is not fully conscious. Up above, the old lady had died, and the oxygen in everyone's mask also runs out, and so they all start to faint. But Fawn, who was still unconscious, starts knocking on the cockpit door and asking the captain for help. But then Fawn sees the ghost of that child here, and suddenly she starts seeing all the ghosts that were present there. Meanwhile, Bank faints while fixing the pressure system. And up above, we see Kif coming back to her senses. She thinks that everyone else is gone, but everyone was still alive because Bank had fixed the pressure system. Then everyone comes back to their senses. And Bank and Nu also came back up. And Bank tells everyone that they have to work together to open the cockpit door. And he takes John with him and starts looking for something to break the cockpit door because they had no idea where this plane was going. And inside, it was obvious that the pilot had died, so who was flying this plane? Seeing all these things and what that ghost said, Fawn comes to Nu and says that Nu should sacrifice herself to those ghosts because they are behind her. Here, that monk tells Fawn that ghosts or spirits are just energy, and they do not possess a body, so they cannot hurt anyone, but they can make people have hallucinations. Fawn also silences that monk by scolding him, and she tells Nu to go to another cabin. So Bank comes there and starts stopping Fawn, but Fawn tells both Bank and Nu to leave from there. After which, Bank and Nu go to another cabin, but that whole cabin was empty, and there were no passengers in it. Now, they were still going forward when suddenly a knocking sound starts coming from the entire plane, as if someone was tapping on the whole plane. Now, Bank and Nu came back to everyone else, but the knocking sound was not stopping. Then the electricity also goes out, and Jamras turns on the flashlight of his mobile, and we see a ghost behind him. Fawn was still saying that they should hand Nu over to the ghosts, so Bank asks Nu everything. Then we can see a short flashback, and then Nu goes towards the cockpit door and tells them that she was also on this plane before. And suddenly, the ghosts of all the air hostesses also come there, and everyone gets scared and starts running here and there. John and Michelle hid in the bathroom, and everyone else starts running here and there. In between, Wave and N get separated, and everyone else goes to the kitchen, and falls down and gets hurt. And Wave could not go further because there was a ghost in the next cabin. So he helps Anne, but a dancer's ghost possesses Anne, and Wave kills her by crushing Anne's head with a fire extinguisher. Then Wave starts breaking the bathroom door. In the meantime, the door breaks. That is, the lock opens, and the door also opens. But Wave accidentally hits John's head with that fire extinguisher, and he also dies. And his body falls on Michelle, and Michelle's face goes into the wash basin, which had water, and she starts suffocating. But Wave somehow removes John's body from her, and he takes Michelle and goes to everyone else. Now, there was another problem here. Kif was not there, but in the form of Kif, there was a ghost who was burning. Everyone was very scared, but they had to find Kif. So Bank, Nu, Jamras, and Wave go down to find Kif. And down there, they find a lot of ghosts. Here, Bank starts asking Nu how she survived last time. So Nu tells him that she sat with her eyes closed. Meanwhile, Fawn takes that monk with her and starts looking for Kif, but they both see the corpse of that old lady lying on the floor. So Fawn forces that monk to check the old lady's body. And when that monk goes and checks her body, she suddenly comes to life and attacks Fawn. That monk just keeps praying in fear, but there were more ghosts there. So that monk gets scared of them and lies down on the floor. And Fawn frees herself from that old lady, and she repeatedly hits that old lady against the wall with a trolley and crushes her head. Now, Fawn starts seeing ghosts everywhere. She also starts seeing that monk as a ghost, and so she also crushes the head of that monk and kills him. Then Prince and Michelle go to Fawn, and Fawn also sees both of them as ghosts. Downstairs, Bank, Jamras, Nu, and Wave see the ghosts of the air hostesses who died there, but they all sit with their eyes closed. Now, Fawn breaks a bottle on Michelle's head, and she repeatedly stabs her with that broken bottle and kills her. Prince now quickly escapes from her and comes downstairs. Now, Wave was very scared downstairs, because of which he opens his eyes, and then he takes out an axe from a toolbox and starts swinging it at those ghosts. But as the monk said, we cannot touch ghosts, and ghosts cannot touch us. And dead people do not die again, so Wave was just swinging an axe in the air. And like that, the axe slips from his hand, which directly hits Prince's face who is coming down. Because of this, he dies right there. Now, Jamras starts yelling at Wave here. So Nu tells everyone that it is not Wave's fault. When she was on this plane before, the same thing happened with the others, and they killed each other. This means that the ghosts did not kill anyone. They just made the passengers have hallucinations. Now, they all come back up, and there were ghosts of all the passengers there, including Prince and Anne. Now, the ghost of an air hostess comes to the door of another cabin, so Wave closes his eyes. But behind that ghost was Fawn, who stabs Wave in the stomach with that same broken bottle. Basically, she had gone crazy. The ghosts had made her have a hallucination. Seeing this, everyone else starts running, and Nu, Bank, and Jamras run down. Here, Wave was still alive, so Fawn kills him with that same axe. Now, the three of them were thinking of a plan to survive downstairs. Then they understand that if they are afraid, they will die. And so they start laughing. And then the ghosts of the air hostesses come there. But because the three of them were not scared, the ghosts suddenly disappear. Now, Fawn was hearing a sound from every trolley up above. So she opens all the trolleys and checks. Inside one of them was Kif. But Fawn also thought she was a ghost, so she starts attacking Kif. But she escapes and runs away. Then Jamras, Bank, and Nu find her. But Fawn comes there and starts attacking them. But Bank hits her and makes her unconscious. Then Bank tells Kif that all this is a hallucination. Jamras also says the same. Then Bank tells Kif to go into the cockpit. And Bank had made a hole in the cockpit door. But he cannot get out of it, so Kif has to go inside and open the door. Then Kif goes into the cockpit. But she was very scared after seeing something. But still, she opens the door somehow. The same thing that shocked Kif also shocks everyone else because there were ghosts all over the plane. From the inside to the outside of the plane. They all noticed that Fawn was gone. And then Fawn comes there and starts attacking Jamras. And she had almost killed Jamras. But then Jamras shoves a fork into Fawn's neck. Now, blood starts coming out of Fawn's neck, and the plane also starts crashing. So Bank quickly goes and tries to stabilize the plane. And he also stabilizes the plane. In the meantime, a lot of forks and knives from a drawer come out and go straight into Fawn's body. And Fawn dies right there. Now, Nu sees the ghosts of her old air hostess friends there. And she tells Bank that she did not let her fellow air hostess come into the cockpit. And she also crushed the head of an air hostess inside a door. Now, they all start going towards the cockpit again. But the ghost of that air hostess possesses Fawn. And she starts trying to kill Nu because everyone thought that because of her, they could not survive. Now, Bank tells Kif and Jamras to go and handle the plane. And he himself starts helping Nu. Then a lot of trolleys come towards the three of them. And the scene shifts to Jamras and Kif, who were trying to fly the plane. And they suddenly see a flashback of all the ghosts who died inside this plane. Then we see that Nu and Bank were still alive. And Bank comes and takes control of the plane and starts trying to land it. Then he calls his friend and tells him everything. And then his friend goes and tells all this to the ATC, that is, the air traffic control officer. And then Bank gets permission to land the plane. And an ambulance and fire brigade had already reached there. The plane was just about to land, but the ghost still wanted to crash the plane. So, in anger, Bank pulls out the main board of that plane. And as soon as he does that, the whole plane becomes completely normal, and it lands properly. This means that somewhere, the main curse was in it. After this, everyone is rescued. But Bank notices that Nu was not there. And we come to know that when that trolley fell on them, Nu died inside it. This means that the one we saw in the end, her spirit came there so that Bank would not feel that Nu had died. And he could easily land the plane here. And this is what the ghosts wanted, because of which the plane became normal. This means that nothing happened by pulling out the board. Now, the scene shifts, and at the end of the movie, we see Flight 47, which was being parked inside a go down. And we see Nu's ghost sitting in the window of that plane. This means that the matter is not over yet, and this plane will always be haunted. And boom! With this, the movie ends here. So friends, this was the story of the movie Dark Flight 47. The most important thing is that the first plane that crashed was the real haunted plane. Then the parts of that plane were put into another plane, and a new plane was prepared. No one had any idea about it. And in the beginning, those two people were investigating here. But they did not find out which plane it was because all its parts were taken out and put into another plane. So, this flight that was flying was going to crash in the same place where it had happened before. But Bank stopped this crash from happening. And this thing was constantly happening like this. The parts of that haunted plane were put into other planes, and the planes kept getting haunted. The same thing happened with Nu. And Flight 47 probably had the main circuit board of the real haunted plane, and that is why everything became normal when it was pulled out. But the plane is still haunted because we saw Nu's ghost at the end of the movie. This means that more passengers will die. It is obvious that companies cannot just discard it like this, because many people believe that all these things are baseless and ridiculous. Because of this, its parts will be used in more planes. And whichever plane has this, it will crash at the same place. Now, you will remember that Nu's psychiatrist had told her that she was completely fine and whatever happened was a hallucination. But that was not the case. In reality, Nu's previous plane was about to crash, but she somehow survived. The most important thing is that her air hostess friend wanted to come inside the cockpit, but she did not let her. It is obvious that she was also having hallucinations, because of which she crushed people's heads just like Fawn was doing. But somehow, Nu got better, and she started her air hostess job again. But she did not know that she would end up on the same flight again. Or rather, she would have to face the ghosts of the past. Now, there is no idea here as to how this main plane, the 47, became haunted. It is possible that the plane might have crashed in some way, because of which some of its parts would have survived. And because of that, the ghosts of the people there would have haunted this plane. And after that, whenever those parts were put in a new plane, the ghosts would appear there. So friends, this was the story of the movie Flight 47. I hope you liked this Thai horror movie.